on the Old Testament. Now, the Jews, the Israelites, they do have to accept Jesus Christ. However, they are already His chosen people. They are already His chosen bloodline. And so I believe here as we see the fish, we're seeing this chosen bloodline. Look, they are going to benefit from Noah, but Noah was not there to be their redeemer, just as Jesus came to redeem the Jews, but it was to fulfill them. It wasn't necessarily to bring them in, it was to fulfill what God had already given them. Now, when you look at them and then you go to the birds, you say, okay, what about the birds? Well, spiritually the birds and physically the birds, they did not necessarily need Noah for redemption. They need Noah for a place to perch. The birds inhabit the air. What they needed is a perching spot, which is what I believe they used Noah's Ark for. I envision in my mind, and I wasn't there, and none of the rest of you were there either, so you can't tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I believe that if you saw a picture of Noah's Ark floating on the water, first of all, it wouldn't look like that picture in children's church with the giraffe head sticking out and the lions looking out the window. But I do believe that you would have seen the entire top of the boat covered in birds. I believe it would have looked like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. You know, they would have been perching there as long as they could perch on that ark. As many birds as could, I believe, perched there. And so they come in and they roam, but they needed a place to perch. When you look through Jewish law, you look through Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, you find over and over that when God gave the law to the Jews and to the Israelites, He made a very common statement. He said, this applies to you, all your manservants and maidservants, and aliens living among you. The aliens living among them were people from other nations that had joined themselves with the Israelites. And I believe that the birds sort of represent this alien, those that have joined themselves with the Israelites. A lot of the ways, the way us Gentiles have today. Through Jesus Christ, we have joined ourselves. The Bible says we are now joint heirs with Christ. We obtain part of the inheritance because of Jesus, just like because of Noah for the birds. Because of Jesus, Jesus' cross has given us a place to perch. Right. He's given us a place to land so that we can become joint heirs and related to the Israelites. And so I believe, as we look at day 5, I believe that we are looking at a picture of redemption. You have the Jewish nation that was chosen. God said, okay, these are my people. I'm going to make a way for them. And then you have the birds, which I believe represents a lot of us. And God's cross, the cross of Jesus Christ, has created a perch, a place for us to land and to rest. I think it's important for us to understand that everything God has done in creation, He has laid out for us spiritually as well. We've talked about through this day, we've talked about the evolution of birds and fish, and how that they have shown things that evolution can't explain, and we have shown things that go against Darwin's theory. Now, you mentioned something earlier, and I want to sort of come back to this. You mentioned excuse me, what's the word?
Cambrian explosion.
Cambrian explosion. Now, tell me a little more about that. I think that's interesting.
All right, I have another video here that kind of talks about the Cambrian explosion. Again, there was a time period back tens of thousands of years ago, if you're an old earther, of a time when all of a sudden it was for a long period of time it was just single-celled organisms, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have these life that automatically came up, and a lot of these lives are around today. Again, they started in the ocean and continue from that. Jellyfish, different type of crustaceans, such as lobsters, things like that. And you know, if you were able to go into the bottoms of the ocean, there's still many, many species that we have yet to know about. And so these species that were created during the Cambrian explosion very well could still be around today. You know, all we see are fossils because all we find are rocks. But the Cambrian explosion goes into, we see fossil records, nothing before that, of fully formed animals. So here's a video on the Cambrian explosion.
Perhaps the most damaging blow to Darwin's theory is the fossil record. If all living organisms have descended from the same primitive life form, then the rock strata of the Earth should be filled with the fossilized remains of animals that were once part of a great evolutionary chain. A chain of small biological modifications, ultimately leading to a spectacular diversity of life. Yet, after 2 centuries of research, highlighted by excavations in southern China, the multitude of transitional experiments, or missing links, that should exist, are conspicuous only by their absence. The most graphic example of this void in the fossil record is a geological era known as the Cambrian explosion.
The branching tree pattern of Darwin's theory is actually not seen anywhere in the fossil record unless we impose it with our own minds. So the Cambrian explosion is the most dramatic refutation of the tree of life.
The Cambrian explosion of life was a dramatic episode in geological history. Usually dated at about 530 million years ago, the exquisitely preserved Cambrian fossils reveal that the body plans for virtually every major animal phyla appeared, not gradually and slowly as Darwin had speculated, but instead with astonishing suddenness.
If we imagine the whole history of life on Earth taking place in one 24-hour period, the current standard estimates for the origin of life put it at about 3.8 billion years ago, let's say 4 billion. So if we start the clock then, our 24-hour clock, 6 hours, nothing but these simple single-celled organisms appear, the same sort that we saw in the beginning. 12 hours, same thing. 18 hours, same thing. 3/4 of the day has passed, and all we have are these simple single-celled organisms. Then at about the 21st hour, in the space of about 2 minutes, boom, most of the major animal forms appear in the form that they currently have in the present. And many of them persist to the present, and we have them with us today. Less than 2 minutes out of a 24-hour period.
All right. One thing I really like that he said again with the 24-hour clock, if we take all of history and do a 24-hour clock within 2 minutes of 24 hours, you have the Cambrian explosion. So you have all these life forms that have come about that were created as far as with history. So this really does defy evolution. It really, you know, breaks it down. Evolutionists can't explain why, but creationists can, because this is when God created the life forms.
Created the life forms. God made the way. He created the life with a word, with a voice. He not only created the life, He created our futures. As we've talked about today, there is a way that we can perch with the chosen. We can become adopted into the family of God. How is that? It's very simple. We accept the cross. We literally land at the cross. We used to sing the old song in my days growing up in the church, at the cross, where I first found Christ. You know, and it is important that we understand the beauty of that cross. If you're watching this today on the internet, or if you're here and you say, you know, I've not been a part of that chosen group. I haven't perched, if you will. I haven't chosen. I haven't decided to let God be the Lord of my life. It's a very simple process.